My wife laughed, announcing our divorce. Finally rid of him. I grinned. Absolutely. Then reality hit when the prenup gave me 80% of everything. Her laughter turned into desperate negotiating. I, 36M, never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these posts, but here I am. Life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. It was a regular Thursday evening when I came home early from a business trip that had wrapped up sooner than expected. I wanted to surprise my wife of 8 years. Turns out, I was the one in for a surprise. As I pulled into our driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the street. Didn't think much of it at first. Our house was quiet when I entered, but I could hear muffled voices coming from our bedroom upstairs. I set my bags down silently and made my way up. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and I could see my wife sitting on our bed, phone in hand, talking to someone on speaker. She was laughing, not the gentle laugh I fell in love with, but something colder, unfamiliar. "He has no idea," she was saying. "The divorce papers are ready. I just need to find the right moment to drop the bomb." A male voice responded, "About time. How's he going to take it?" "Who cares? I'll finally be rid of him and that suffocating marriage. His family money made it tolerable, but I'm done playing the dutiful wife." I stood there, frozen. 8 years of marriage reduced to a financial arrangement in her eyes. The betrayal cut deep, but something else was bubbling up inside me, a strange sense of calm clarity. I pushed the door open. "Don't let me interrupt." Her face went white. "You're supposed to be in Chicago until tomorrow." "Clearly," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "So, divorce papers?" She recovered quickly, straightening her back. "Well, this isn't how I wanted to do this, but yes, I want a divorce. I'm not happy, haven't been for years." "Finally rid of me, huh?" I quoted her words back. She had the decency to look embarrassed for a moment before her expression hardened. "Yes, finally. We both know this marriage has been dead for a long time." I nodded slowly. "Absolutely." Her eyebrows shot up, clearly surprised by my easy agreement. "That's it. Absolutely. What did you expect? Begging? Tears?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "If you want out, there's the door." She seemed thrown off by my reaction, but quickly recovered with a triumphant smile. "Well, I've already spoken to a lawyer. We'll split everything 50-50, of course. I was thinking I'd keep the house since you travel so much anyway." That's when I couldn't help but smile. About that, I walked back downstairs without another word, leaving her confused. I poured myself a whiskey, the expensive kind her father had gifted us for our 5th anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. I heard her footsteps on the stairs a few minutes later. "What do you mean about that?" she demanded, standing in the doorway of our kitchen. "This is a community property state. I get half." I took a slow sip before answering. "Remember that stack of papers you signed the week before our wedding? The ones my family's lawyer insisted on." Her face flickered with uncertainty. "The prenup? That was just a formality. Your mother was being paranoid." "My mother," I said carefully, "was being prudent. Something you might have realized if you'd actually read what you signed." The next morning, I met with my lawyer, an old family friend who had drafted our prenuptial agreement 8 years ago. My wife arrived with her attorney, a slick-looking guy in an expensive suit who kept whispering in her ear. "Before we begin," my lawyer started, "I think we should review the prenuptial agreement that both parties signed before the marriage." My wife waved her hand dismissively. "That old thing? It's standard, right? 50-50 split if we divorce." My lawyer slid copies across the table. "Actually, no. Perhaps you should review section 7.3. As they read, I watched my wife's face transform. First confusion, then disbelief, finally horror. "This can't be right," she stammered. Her lawyer looked grim. "It appears that in case of divorce, you retain only 20% of assets acquired during the marriage, with exceptions for inheritance and family businesses, which remain 100% with their original owner." "Which means," my lawyer continued, "the house, the vacation property in Aspen, the investment portfolio, and the majority of liquid assets remain with my client." "But that's not fair," my wife exploded. "I've been married to him for 8 years. 8 years during which you lived quite comfortably," I pointed out. "In properties purchased with my family's money, driving cars bought with my income, wearing jewelry I gifted you. I was your wife. I supported your career. By sleeping with other men and plotting to divorce me for my money?" The words came out before I could stop them. Her lawyer looked at her sharply. "You didn't mention infidelity." "Because there wasn't any," she snapped, but her eyes couldn't meet mine. I pulled out my phone and played the recording from yesterday, her conversation about being finally rid of him and how my family money made it tolerable. The room fell silent. "That's inadmissible," her lawyer finally said, but without conviction. "Maybe in court," my lawyer replied. "But we're not in court yet. We're negotiating. And this certainly provides context for why my client is unwilling to offer more than the prenup requires." My wife's face had lost all color. You can't do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, I said quietly. These are the terms you agreed to. I have the signed document with your initials on every page. She stood up abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. I need a moment with my attorney. They stepped outside, and I could hear her raised voice through the door. My lawyer leaned over. You okay? He asked quietly. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if that was true. 8 years of my life felt like they were going up in smoke. I thought we were building something together. All those late nights at the office, the business trips I hated but endured to secure our future, not just mine. And all along, she'd been counting the days until she could cash out. When they returned, her lawyer's expression was carefully neutral. We'd like to propose a counteroffer. We're listening, my lawyer said. My client is willing to accept a 60-40 split in your client's favor, with the house going to her. I almost laughed. The house is worth $2.3 million. That's not happening. I helped design that house, she protested. Every fixture, every paint color, that was me. With my family's money, I reminded her. And apparently while you were planning your exit strategy. Her lawyer tried again. Perhaps we could discuss alimony arrangements that would dash. The prenup specifically excludes alimony except in cases of disability, my lawyer interrupted. Section 9.2. I watched as the reality of her situation sank in. She'd gambled on my ignorance or my sentimentality, and she'd lost. The next few weeks were a blur of negotiations. My wife's tactics shifted from anger to bargaining to tearful pleas. She claimed she'd made a mistake, that she still loved me, that we could work things out. What about the years we shared? She asked during one particularly tense meeting. Don't they count for anything? They counted for everything, I replied, until I heard how you really felt. Her lawyer tried every angle to invalidate the prenup, claiming coercion, unfair terms, lack of proper legal representation when she signed. None of it stuck. Then came the threats. She'd tell everyone I was abusive. She'd drag my name through the mud. She'd make the divorce as messy and public as possible. Go ahead, I told her. I have nothing to hide. Do you? That shut her up quickly. We both knew what would come out if she pushed for a public battle. One night, about a month into the proceedings, she showed up at the hotel where I was staying. The desk clerk called my room. Sir, your wife is here. She's quite insistent on seeing you. I considered turning her away, but decided it might be better to hear what she had to say. When she knocked on my door, I was shocked by her appearance. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail so different from her usual polished look. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside, keeping the door wide open. I've been thinking, she began, pacing the small room. Maybe we rushed into this divorce thing. I raised an eyebrow. You had divorce papers ready before I even knew there was a problem. She winced. I know how that sounds, but it sounds exactly like what it was, I interrupted. A calculated decision to leave once you'd extracted maximum value. That's not fair, she protested, but her voice lacked conviction. What's not fair is discovering that the person you built your life around was just waiting for the right moment to cash out. She sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders slumping. It wasn't always like that. You know it wasn't. And that was the worst part I did know. There had been good times, real moments of connection and love. At least, I thought they were real. What do you want? I asked finally. I want us to try again, she said, looking up at me with those eyes that used to make my heart skip. Couples therapy, a fresh start. We could dash. Stop, I said gently. We both know that's not going to happen. Because of the money? She asked bitterly. Because of the trust. There isn't any left. Update 1. 3 months into the divorce proceedings, my wife showed up at my new apartment unannounced. She looked different, the designer clothes and perfect makeup replaced by jeans and a simple blouse. Can we talk? She asked. No lawyers, no games. Just us. Against my better judgment, I let her in. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she began, sitting on the edge of my couch. I was wrong. About everything. Which part? The cheating? The lying? The attempt to take half of what my family built? She winced. All of it. I got caught up in. I don't know. I was unhappy and blamed you instead of looking at myself. And now that you're facing financial consequences, you've seen the light? I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. I deserve that, she admitted. But it's more than the money. I threw away something real for something that wasn't. He left, you know. Once he realized I wouldn't be coming with a fortune, I wasn't surprised. What do you want from me? A second chance, she suggested, her voice small. Or at least a better ending than this. We were friends once, before we were anything else. I studied her face, searching for the manipulation, the angle. But all I saw was defeat and maybe, just maybe, genuine regret. I can't give you a second chance, I said finally. Too much has happened. But I can consider more equitable terms if you're honest with me. About everything. She nodded slowly. Where do you want me to start? The beginning, I said. When did it all change? She took a deep breath. It wasn't one moment. It was gradual. You were building the business, always working. I felt like an accessory, not a partner. You never said anything. Would you have listened? She challenged. You were so focused on proving yourself to your family, to the board. There wasn't room for my complaints. There was some truth to that, I had to admit. The first years of our marriage coincided with my taking over a struggling division of the family business. I'd worked 80-hour weeks, desperate to turn things around. That doesn't justify cheating, I said. No, she agreed. Nothing does. I made choices, terrible ones. I could say I was lonely or neglected, but plenty of people feel that way and don't do what I did. Her honesty was disarming. For the first time since this all began, I felt like I was talking to a real person, not the caricature of greed and betrayal I'd built in my mind. How many were there? I asked, not sure I wanted the answer. She looked down at her hands. 3. Over the last 4 years. The number hit me like a physical blow. For years, half our marriage. And the divorce plan? About a year, she admitted. My friend went through a divorce last year and got a huge settlement. I started thinking that you could do the same. She nodded, shame evident in her posture. I consulted with 3 different lawyers before finding one who told me what I wanted to hear. They all asked about a prenup, but I remembered signing something quickly before the wedding. I didn't think it would be that restrictive. My family doesn't play games when it comes to protecting assets, I said. You should have known that. I should have known a lot of things, she replied quietly. Update 2. The truth, when it finally came out, was worse than I'd imagined. The affair had been going on for over 2 years. There had been others before him. She'd been planning the divorce for months, consulting with lawyers about how to maximize her payout. Why marry me in the first place? I asked during one of our conversations. She looked away. I did love you in the beginning. Then life got complicated. You were building your career, always working. I felt invisible. So you made yourself visible to other men. It wasn't just about the attention, she insisted. I convinced myself I deserved more than what we had. More excitement, more passion, more money. You had access to plenty of money. Access isn't ownership, she said quietly. I wanted something that was mine, not ours. Not yours that you shared with me. It was the most honest she'd been in years. As the weeks passed, our conversations became less hostile. We weren't reconciling that bridge had burned completely, but we were finding a way to end things with some measure of dignity. I consulted with my family about modifying the terms of the divorce. My father was adamantly against it. She tried to take advantage of you. He reminded me over dinner at his house. Why show mercy now? It's not about mercy, I explained. It's about closing this chapter cleanly. I don't want to spend the next year fighting over every asset. My sister, always the pragmatist, sided with me. Give her enough to start over, but not enough to feel like she won. Then you can both move on. My lawyer was less enthusiastic about the idea. The prenup is solid. We don't need to give an inch. It's not about need, I told him. It's about want. I want this over with. I want to rebuild my life without this hanging over me. He shook his head but drafted the new proposal. A 70/30th split instead of 80/20ths. One of the smaller properties, and a cash settlement that would allow her to start over comfortably without the windfall she'd been counting on. When we presented the offer, her lawyer looked suspicious. What's the catch? No catch, my lawyer replied. My client wants to resolve this amicably. My wife studied me across the table. Why? Because holding on to anger is exhausting, I said simply. And because despite everything, those 8 years weren't all a lie. At least not for me. Update 3. 6 months after that fateful Thursday, we finalized the divorce. In the end, I agreed to a 70/30th split instead of 80/20ths. She got one of the smaller properties and enough money to start over comfortably, though nowhere near the windfall she'd been planning on. Why did you give me more than you had to? She asked as we left our lawyer's office for the last time. Because I wanted this chapter of my life closed with something other than bitterness, I answered. And because despite everything, those 8 years weren't all a lie. At least not for me. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'm sorry I couldn't be who you thought I was. I'm sorry I couldn't be who you needed me to be, I replied. We parted ways on the sidewalk outside. No dramatic goodbye, no final embrace. Just 2 people who once promised forever, now walking in opposite directions. The first few months after the divorce were harder than I expected. I threw myself into work, taking on projects that required travel, anything to avoid the empty apartment I'd rented. Friends tried to set me up on dates, but my heart wasn't in it. My sister finally intervened after I missed our monthly family dinner for the 3rd time in a row. You can't hide forever, she said, showing up at my apartment with takeout and determination. I'm not hiding, I protested. I'm busy. You're avoiding, she corrected, unpacking containers of food. There's a difference. She was right, of course. I was going through the motions of living without actually engaging with life. She's moved on, you know, my sister mentioned casually as we ate. I heard she's dating some real estate agent now. I was surprised by my lack of reaction. No jealousy, no anger, just a dull acknowledgement. Good for her. Is it? My sister pressed. Because you don't seem to be moving on at all. Her words stung because they were true. I was stuck in a holding pattern, not grieving but not healing either. I trusted her completely, I admitted. How do I trust anyone again after that? My sister's expression softened. You start small. You take risks. You accept that getting hurt is part of living. Update 4. It's been a year since the divorce was finalized. I've rebuilt my life piece by piece, new apartment, focus on my career, even started dating again recently. Nothing serious, but it's a start. I ran into my ex-wife last week at a restaurant. She was with friends, laughing genuinely. Our eyes met across the room, and we exchanged small nods of recognition. No hatred, no lingering resentment. Just acknowledgement of a shared past and separate futures. After dinner, as I was waiting for the valet to bring my car, she approached me. You look good, she said, and seemed to mean it. So do you, I replied, and it was true. She looked lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. I've been meaning to thank you, she said, surprising me. For the settlement. You could have left me with nothing. Not nothing, I corrected. 20% of a lot is still substantial. You know what I mean. She hesitated. I didn't deserve your generosity. Maybe not, I agreed. But revenge wouldn't have brought me peace. We stood in awkward silence for a moment before she spoke again. I heard the company's doing well. The new product line is getting great reviews. I nodded. It's been a good year for business. I'm glad, she said, and again, she seemed sincere. You worked hard for it. The valet pulled up with my car, saving us from further small talk. Take care of yourself, I said as I opened the car door. You too, she replied. And I really am sorry. For everything. I nodded once before driving away, surprised by the sense of closure that brief encounter had given me. The prenup that saved me from financial ruin couldn't protect my heart from being broken. But it did give me the leverage I needed to end things on my terms, not hers. Sometimes winning doesn't feel like you'd expect it to. It's not triumphant or satisfying, it's just a quiet relief that the worst is behind you. For those wondering if prenups are worth it, yes, absolutely. Not because you plan for your marriage to fail, but because if it does, you deserve to be protected from someone who sees you as nothing but a payday. And for those in the midst of betrayal like I was, it gets better. The anger fades. The pain dulls. And eventually, you find yourself smiling again, not because you got revenge, but because you survived. Last week, I met someone at a friend's dinner party. We talked all night about books and travel and our shared love of obscure documentaries. When she gave me her number, I didn't hesitate to call the next day. I'm not rushing into anything, but for the first time in a long time, I'm open to possibilities. That's the real victory, not the money I kept or the property I retained, but the ability to trust again, to hope again, to believe that one person's betrayal doesn't define all relationships. My ex-wife thought she was getting rid of me when she planned that divorce. In a way, she was right, but not in the way she intended. She freed me from a marriage built on lies. And in doing so, she gave me the chance to find something real.